The whole theme of this talk is about how we are going to get symbol literacy so we can graduate and evolve spiritually. Because, as Nietzsche clearly pointed out, we have the misfortune, or the fortune, who knows which, of being the only creature who must constantly overcome himself in order to live fully. So there is a drag factor. There's individuals who absolutely are bent double, working overtime to make sure that we do not evolve and that our children regress, that civilizations are in retrograde. What would happen if a pharaoh came back today? And some of the techniques that they use in this psychic dictatorship are words, symbols, colors, rhythms, light, movement, mudras, which means hand positions, gestures, which have been used for aeons as means of spiritualization, used by cults, infused with mysticism, are now being used on us for quite an opposite agenda. To drag us down into the pits of our own miasma, our own hells. As Carl Jung said, consciousness is a recent acquisition of nature. It is still in an experimental state, so to speak. It is frail, menaced by specific dangers and easily injured. As anthropologists have noted, one of the most common mental derangements that occur among primitive people is what they call the loss of a soul. Take this comment that he's talking about and transpose it to our societies today. That is exactly what is happening. The loss of soul. How is this technique done? What is going on? How are they doing this to us? You've heard the story of the zombie, right, in Haiti? Well, the zombie was a person just like you or I, and they slipped something into his drink. And that is the resin or the potion or the liquid or whatever you want to call it, the solution from the datura plant. Now, if you drink that, you become kind of zombified, but the next day you kind of be back to normal. So every day, you see, the witch doctor had to continually administer the datura plant poison, otherwise it wouldn't work. Well, we have the same thing today. Only it's called TV. It's called the media. Every day, the steady diet of predigested mumbo-jumbo. And it really reminded me of this wonderful movie called The Devil Rides Out, in which the satanic characters, and he's busy hypnotizing somebody. He says that your will is leaving you, slipping away, and you are beneath my influence. Though your eyes are open and you seem aware, you are in fact asleep. Your faculties dormant, your ability to act and think subservient to my will. That is the agenda. The consequence on the grassroots level is that we are running around shopping malls, busy spending and buying and being busy with all of that. 6 hours a week, the average person spends shopping, as opposed to 40 minutes a week with their children, and then we wonder why we got problems. Research has shown that in the first few milliseconds of your perceiving something, we do not only unconsciously comprehend what it is, but we decide whether or not we like it. The cognitive unconscious presents our awareness with not just the identity of what we see, but an opinion about it. Our emotions have a mind of their own, one which can hold views quite independently of your rational mind. And the demographics have changed since even the 50s of how much change there's been by the advent of the media. The word consumer actually comes from consumption, and it didn't mean anything good. It actually meant to pillage, to desecrate, destroy, and if you know, consumption was the term that was used when you had tuberculosis, when you couldn't breathe, when you had no life force. The consumer. Well, before we get to how they're doing it, we got to say who is doing it. So a little recap on the fact of other things that you've heard here is that there is an occult history of America. And these are the individuals who have always used symbolism coming out of the ancient world, as Jordan and others have shown. The man on the left is Adam Weishaupt, who was the head of the Illuminati, whose origin date was May 1st, 1776, quite close to July 4th, 1776, the founding of America. His mantle passed to Giuseppe Mazzini, who then, when he passed away, the mantle of the Illuminati passed to the man on the right, who is called Albert Pike. Everyone in this room should be familiar with who this man is and what he is about, because he brought what is called Scottish Rite Freemasonry system to this country. Scottish Rite Freemasonry. And the symbols on the dollar bill are the hallmarks of this order, this secret society that George Washington and other of your founding fathers were warning about. If you go to their memoirs and read it, they were Freemasons, but Freemasonry was a positive, basically philanthropic society at that time, and was infused by these negative elements from Bavaria and from the old world of Europe. And they warned against it. In fact, the Duke of Brunswick, the head of Grand World Freemasonry, had stood up in the 17th century and asked for the disbanding of World Freemasonry completely, because he was aware that it had been infused with negative elements of Illuminist philosophy. And George Washington and others in this country did likewise. Unfortunately, nothing happened. And the Illuminati were able to infiltrate this societies of Freemasons, and they're still operating today. And this has a bearing on what we'll be talking about. Here is a proof, of course, just for anyone who doesn't know, that the founding fathers definitely were involved in Freemasonry. You'll notice that on the Washington bust there, it says Freemason and First President. Now let's read that again. Freemason and First President. Not the other way around. Thank you. Important detail. To go into Masonry, endless story, can't do it, haven't got the time. But the point is, just the word alone, just my innocent fascination with words and terms that these individuals use, M-A-S-O-N, if you actually draw a hexagram on the pyramid, you will find that that actually inscribes. It's been in front of you for many generations, but you don't notice it. Remember Edgar Allan Poe? You want to hide something, you put it in plain view. Jordan Maxwell talked about the scorpion sting, the double scorpionic sting, remember, of the tail? Remember that? Look at the prongs of the banner there and ask yourself something about symbolism. These people have never hidden who they are, so we're not talking like Ken Thomas was saying, forget a conspiracy theory, it's all conspiracy, no theory. Here you have it, at the G8 summit, G8 summit, peak, summit. You have all these fine fellows sitting around a round table, which is of course coming from the Celtic mythologies of Arthurian legends, with a pyramid in the middle. Here's Mitterrand of France, Bill Clinton of America, Blair, a bunch of other criminals, I'm not aware of who they are. And here's Larry, Moe, and Curly. You think they're all from different parties? Think again, simple dialectics. They're all in the same gang. I'm preaching to the choir here, so we'll not spend too much time on that. But you see, what we have to understand is that the girl next door gets involved too, or what they put before you as the girl next door are people who often have, as Arizona Wilder will only be too happy to tell you, long associations with fraternities and secret orders. Again, the pervasiveness of occultism right in the face of people if they only know where to look. The tarot cards. Nothing negative about tarot cards, nothing negative about the occult. But they're using it. In the cards, in the tarot deck, the major arcana, card number 4 is what we call the Emperor. It shows a king sitting in a marble throne with a stern countenance. Now wait a minute. If you go to Washington, D.C. and look at the Lincoln Memorial, what do you see there? Most statues of presidents are standing, aren't they? Or they're a bust. Isn't there something peculiar about that symbol? Where do you think they got it? It came from the tarot. It has occult origins. The very symbol of the Lincoln Memorial of the great president sitting in the chair with that type of countenance has an origin in the occult. One of the symbols that should be well known, pretty generically known, is the famous handshake of the craft members. And in corporate logos, you'll see this constantly. I can only share with you a very small amount of the work that I've been doing since I was 13, but I'm sure that the point will be made that when you look at these ad copy again or billboards, you'll start to see these associations and understand more what they are. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know how that one got in. Anyway, the Masons refer to their own procedures, their own teachings as the craft. If you get into studying the, Jordan Maxwell has labored for years to discover the occult roots of government, big business, you know, and religion. Big business, yes. Even the big businesses, they're not the rags to riches tales that have been put in front of you where individuals make their money on the white market. The white market makes up a very small amount of the money that's in the world. Let's start studying the black market, not as has been put before you, a bunch of drug-dealing gangsters on the side of the streets. That's not the black market I'm talking about. It's the occult underworld, where the main trading and wheeling and dealing of the world is done, where you can get anything for any price. Well, when we look into that, we'll find that there is, again, occult origins, and behind these big businesses, the franchises, the corporations, hopefully we can prove a little bit today that there is an occult origin. You've seen the pyramid, and a pyramid basically has three sides. Because the number 3 is very important in Freemasonry. Very important. In fact, if we look at it, we find that the number 3 is sacred, and it is the reason why it has been incorporated into so many areas of religious and secular life. We have the economic world with its first, second, and third worlds. We didn't create that, but yet there's the terms. We have the main political parties. We have social classes, calling us upper, middle, and lower. Well, I didn't think of myself as anything like that, but here we are. We have these terms made for us by social critics, sociologists. We have the competence levels in sports. We've got the levels of matriculation. We've got the branches of government, the legislature, the armed forces even, and the courts. 3 divisions, always 3. It's a very important number to look out for. In your Senate, there's 3 tiers high. The emphasis on the number 3. The word threshold. The Masons talk about the entrance to all temples, cathedrals, and churches being called a threshold. That means thrice hold. One of their gods is called the thrice great, Hermes. It's an old story. It goes back to the Druids and ancient civilizations, where they also divided their priestarchies into 3 distinct groups. That's why on the flags of the world you'll find the tripartite, the tricolor. So many flags of the world have the tri part, telling you who owns them, who's running. And again, in our modern ambiance, you find symbols of societies and orders using the double triangle, the 33, and the symbol of the serpent, which, if anyone's familiar with my work on Atlantis, the serpent comes in very strongly there. Okay, the double triangle of the 33rd. Again, they're not even hiding things here. ABC Towers, by the way, in Los Angeles, is 2 triangles, 2 large triangles. And symbols in America. Right, let's take it to the context now, coming more to the particular in your own country. The symbol of the eagle has been explored, and how the eagle then turns up on lots of corporate logos. It actually has to do with the fact that the eagle is the old symbol for Scorpio. Long before Scorpio got a scorpion as its symbol, the symbol was the eagle. Aquila, it's called. And if you look at an old planisphere, you'll see it. It's a gigantic constellation in the sign of Scorpio. And that is why the Romans used the symbol of the eagle. That is why the Vatican used it. That is why the Nazis ended up using it. And that's why it's in America. Because the same gang are running the show, and they use the same symbols. It has not got to do with the fact that it's the bald eagle, the indigenous symbol of whatever. No. It has to do with the fact of the sign of Scorpio, which any competent astrologer will tell you rules power and money. The sign of Scorpio. Again, a very elaborate study in itself. We don't have time to go into it. We're looking for corporate logos. We're looking for geometry. You don't have to look very far. And the connection to the occult. The pentagon, and that shape is suggestive of many things, actually was designed by a high priest in the Ordo Templi Orientis. That's a secret society from Germany, and who was a very close friend of L. Ron Hubbard. There's a big connection between John Whiteside Parsons, who was an advisor to the military, who was also involved in a very high-level secret society called the OTO. Another great book by David Oveson, The Secret Architecture of Our Nation's Capital, proves that symbolism was used in even the design of the cities of America, including Washington, D.C. He says that there are 22 zodiacs secreted into the architecture of Washington, D.C. 22. And hundreds of other astrological symbols. But 22 zodiacs secreted into the architecture of Washington, D.C.? There's only 4 in London. If you go around London, there's 4, but there's 22 in your own capital city. The whole thing being based on geometry and symbolism. When you wanted to write the word Sirius in Egyptian, you did it with the hieroglyphic that's on the bottom right. It was an obelisk, a star, and an oval. Okay? That was how you drew the name Sirius in Egyptian. What do you have in Washington, D.C. in stone is exactly that. The Oval Office, the Pentagon, and the obelisk. Why would they want to do that? What on earth has Sirius and star systems far away got to do with Washington and America's destiny? Why are any stars on any flags anywhere? The laying of the capstone, the laying of the monuments, the whole design was based on Freemasonry. If you don't believe it, there is the proof, because there is the symbol of Freemasonry on the block that they're laying. Okay? Right there is a symbol that is known in Freemasonry. That symbol that I showed you is referred to as the compass and the rule. A wonderful study in itself, and the letter G in the middle. But we don't have time to go into the occult history of these things. I just want to show you how it turns up in logos and corporations. Here you find the exact same symbols of the mallet, the Masonic hammer, and the rule, the compass, and the key. The key is very important because it relates to Vatican intelligence. It relates to secret societies coming out of Italy, and your governor Al Cecchi, when he ran for governor, he used a very distinctive key as his logo. And in Seattle you have what's called the Key Bank. The Key Bank. And the Florida Keys and so on. That symbol of the compass turns up in the car company Acura. That funny looking A is their symbol. If you actually look at it properly, you'll find that it is a Masonic compass. I've always said in the writings that I've done on this subject that over 70% of the things that you buy, the products that you buy, have names that don't mean anything in English. Don't believe me? Go to your Safeway, go to any of these stores, and just observe that one day. Of how many symbols and products don't have a name that means anything in English. Now, you'd think that the merchant would want to sell his wares as quickly as he could, right? But we're not talking about the merchant here. We're talking about the designers that he goes to in order to get a logo or get a design made. We're talking about those individuals and not necessarily the merchants. So I'm not talking about this coming from the merchant world. They don't know anything. They just want to sell or open a motel and whatever else they want to do. This does not originate from them. But Acura, what does that word mean? We also find that in Freemasonry you have the color blue. That is very important because the first opening degrees of Freemasonry are called the blue and red degrees. That's why you have red light districts and blue movies. Oh yeah, let's find out what's been going on here. But you also have this strange fixation with the color blue turning up a lot. And you find it heavily in the corporate world. You find it in government, but you also find it in corporate world. Just that alone, just take one little piece. Just look at color. Open your aesthetic eyes and look at how color is being used in our society. Because color is very important to spiritual uplift and how color and vibration are used. You find it in the context of America, the dollar bill, or money. This symbol, by the way, is well known, of course, but it actually is the word Isis, the goddess of the moon, concertinaed together in a designer fashion. That's what it is, because this is not a symbol that's new, by the way. This symbol goes back many 20 or so thousand years into Egypt. This symbol that you have for money, of the great S of the serpent and the two rods, representing the goddess Isis, who is the goddess of the moon. That's why coins are silver, gold, and bronze, representing the sun, the moon, and the earth. Just like the medals that you get at the Olympic Games, there's a reason why they have those colors and why money is only in 3 colors. The sun, the moon, and the earth. Another Masonic motif is what they call the floor of the house. It's basically a checkerboard. You can go into any Freemasonic lodge and you'll see it, the checkerboard. There's George Washington standing on it. It's one of their seminal motifs. It's also why you see it on the hats of the police. They're literally, and they wear blue, don't they? The blue robes. And the checkerboard is found on the hats of the police because they're just officiating for the system, for these fraternities. Don't believe it? Here's the Los Angeles Times. Do you remember the FBI investigations, federal investigations into the corruption in Los Angeles? They're still ongoing, but started a few years ago. Let's just observe this little article that I found. I think it was Jordan, you picked this up. 2 sergeants are among those to be charged in alleged planting of a gun to frame a suspect, sources say. More charges are possible. These 3 policemen had, interned themselves in a house and were not giving themselves up. But let's look what is said here. According to one source, district attorney officials do not plan to give the 3 an opportunity to surrender themselves to authorities today. Right? So no leniency for the 3 cops who are the bad guys. They're going to be arrested, the source said. They're not part of the Brotherhood. They're not part of any fraternity. They're going to be arrested like anybody else. I didn't write it.